said, say hi, David. You have to say hi to the people.
So today,
sorry about that. Yeah, I had this muted while I was typing. But yeah, sorry about that.
hey, I see today that we're a bit under the weather, a bit slow, and most of our episodes. But today we're dealing with a very, I would say, a broad topic, or a very somewhat controversial topic. Cordell, you sent a white paper by ARK Invest Unchained, and it was mainly based around Bitcoin and quantum computing. So, Cordell, if you can explain to the viewers just something very simplistic for someone that's not very tech savvy, what is quantum computing?
Yeah, so I think one thing I've always said, just to start, like even just give a little bit of context, I've always been a big fan of ARK and Cathie Wood. I know it's a very, I wouldn't say controversial. I think you either love her or you don't, but I've always been a big fan. And, sometimes their white papers that they come out with every year usually are a big draw, a big read, and this one is no different. So once a year, they come out with their big ideas. They come out with some of the themes and stuff that they feel will be driving the markets, at least from the disruptive innovation side. So in this case, a couple of their analysts have put out a white paper. It's not just them, they were coupled with Unchained. So I guess we should put a disclosure here that both ARK and Unchained have an interest in Bitcoin and an interest in Bitcoin going up, since they invest heavily in the space. So that doesn't invalidate anything of what they've done. It's just, just proper disclosure. So the whole point behind the paper that they came out, and it's very timely because, quantum computing has been, a very dominant theme for a number of years now. In fact, quantum computing stocks have really taken off. So I know that the first time I've owned QTUM, which is an ETF for quantum computing, since 16 or 17 when I first bought it. Mostly because I had taken an online course on quantum computing, and I couldn't get over what this stuff was. And now that we're coming to the point where quantum computing is a reality, we're not 100% sure, but that's a point of what this white paper has done, is they're trying to say the state at which quantum computing is in right now and what it could look like over the coming years. So what exactly is quantum computing? So if we think about a normal computer, right, it's all binary computer language, 0 and 1. So this is what a bit is. We've all heard these terms in computers. We have a bit. A bit can either be a 0 or a 1. And I said or, it can't be both. So ultimately, every single piece of information stored or communicated by a computer is a sequence of 0 and 1s. It's binary. Quantum computers work incredibly differently. They use quantum bits or qubits. So in this case, it takes advantage of a quantum physics principle called superposition. Whereas with the classical computer, a bit could only be 0 or 1. In this case, the qubits can actually exist in both states at once. So you could be a 0 and a 1 at the exact same time. That's what the principle of superposition is. And then you take advantage of the next concept, which is quantum entanglement. So when you start entangling all of your qubits together, so if you think about it, you have all of these things now coming together in 0 and 1, or in any combination. This just gives you not infinite, but a huge amount of different combinations of data than you could do classically when everything was just 0 or 1. You just have to think about the math behind it. All the potential states that the entangled bits can exist in is a lot crazier with quantum computing. So, and I think it's important to note that this doesn't necessarily mean that quantum computers are going to be faster necessarily than classical computers. That's not actually true at all. For the majority of tasks and algorithms, your computer today is actually, they're talking about browsing the web, running a spreadsheet, even, let's say, training AI models. You don't need quantum computing for that. You actually might even be a little bit slower. The classical computers are going to remain superior. Where quantum computing will really excel is solving very specific mathematical problems that classical computers just find like way too difficult, intractable almost. And, we're talking about like factoring incredibly large numbers or computing discrete logarithms. And that is exactly where the concern comes for Bitcoin is that now we could use its ability for complex algorithms and logarithmic algorithms to break the encryption of Bitcoin. And that's where we are today. So the purpose of this paper, and what I think we're going to be discussing today, is where in fact is quantum computing? Should we all be scared? And should we all be moving our Bitcoin to a soft wallet, a cold wallet, running to the hills with a few shotguns, and then shooting anybody that comes close to us with a quantum computer? So that was the point of the paper. And that's pretty much, the state of debates today.
Yeah.
How was that? Did I do a decent job explaining that?
I think it was well over explained. It was a great explanation. But for some
Thank
people,
you.
I don't think you really should have your crypto on an exchange or in any software. A hard wallet is always best for the most part. But just to add to what you said, Cordell, I think we can really break it down into like stages as to where we are with the whole process of like quantum computing. So let's say, for instance, we're at like, let's say stage 1, where computer is just existing and it doesn't really pose any threat to like any, let's say, cryptography or any encryption systems or anything like that. It's just existing, right? And then we can probably have like stage 2 or stage 1, stage 2, where it's not necessarily the best, but it's also breaking encryption systems on like Bitcoin network. Then we can probably have like stage 2, where the computers are breaking encryptions, but it's very resource heavy, or the process may take a lot of time, or it's very slow. Yep. And then you have like stage 3 itself, where it does pose a lot of, let's say, threats to the Bitcoin network, and the transactions are very fast.
Yeah, well, I mean, the threat, I think the first thing, when I started looking into this, the first threat, I mean, I agree 100% with the stages. And I think that's a very important part of it is, exactly where are we in the quantum computing and all that. But I think what's important to understand also is what the specific threat is to Bitcoin. And then is it just Bitcoin, or is Ethereum and Solana, if we just stick to those, for example, or, most people are building, are those at risk also? So the threat really comes from the fact that public keys are not normally, but they've been exposed in some transactions, especially the original Bitcoins, right? So if we think about how many Bitcoins, when they had a transaction, whenever you were executing a transaction on that blockchain, the public key would have been exposed against it. Now, that's not normally a problem, because if you think about it, the whole point behind Bitcoin encryption is that it is very, easy to derive the public key from the private key. So you have your private encrypted key, and then it gets, that's how you create your public key. You cannot go backwards. That's the whole point behind the security of Bitcoin, of the entire hashing, is that you cannot go from public key back to the private key. The danger is now that you have quantum computing, you could do that. And that could potentially expose the public or private keys of anything that had a transaction that had it, which is why Ethereum, as I understand it, is even more exposed in Bitcoin, because all of Ethereum transactions have a public key tied to it. So, yeah. I mean, I think that's really the first thing to understand, Gio, is that, that's the state. So it's not every single Bitcoin out there that is in danger. It's really the original Satoshi ones that had public keys, associated with the transaction. So I know that that deviated a little bit away from your question about the stages and everything like that, but I just think it was important to understand before you even think about it, is just that, that's the risk. The risk is having a computer now being able to crack a private key based on what they see from the public key. So that means mostly, that not every Bitcoin is at risk. Just I forget I think there was actually in the white paper, right? I think there was actually a pie chart in there that said how many Bitcoins would be at risk. Let's see if I can pull that up quickly. So yeah, I think it was just saying the non-vulnerable supply is about 65% of the total Bitcoins.
Yeah. It said I think it was like 1.7 million are in like all address
Yeah,
types. So technically, like they're lost, but they're vulnerable, right? Is that true?
yeah, vulnerable supply due to address type. That is, yeah, like that's the old style that had the public key associated. Is about 1.7 million Bitcoin. So it's about 8.6% of the total supply, which, if you think about it, is really not that much, right?
Mhm.
So the majority of people's Bitcoin, because they never, it was done either later on or the first time they used it or did something with it was later on. So their public key wasn't really exposed. Ethereum, on the other hand, is like completely exposed, as I understand it. At least it was. I mean, we have time here to plan and prepare, anyways. So that's the thing for, as I understand it, from Ethereum. So, and I think Solana has taken some very early steps to start protecting against this.
Yeah, but we're still stages behind where quantum computing isn't necessarily a threat to like any cryptocurrency as of right now. But how let's say later down the line, how much later down the line do you think we probably have a prototype that will be able to crack open a cryptocurrency wallet or digital asset wallet?
I don't know if I'd be able to tell you. First, I don't want to ever claim to be a quantum computing expert. I just read a lot and I tend to absorb a lot of information and I do my research. But I mean, like IBM and Google would have you believe that it's coming in the next 2 to 3, 5 years. I think they said by the end of the decade. I find that very hard to believe. I would say by 2040, maybe that would just be my somewhat semi-informed opinion. I don't know, David, if you've seen anything else, or if you have any other like any thoughts on when like quantum computing could be at the stage to actually expose private keys. I don't see it happening in the next 5 years. I don't think ARK does either. That's kind of the point.
No, supposedly it would be within the next 10, but similar projections ended up being wrong because those projections tend to go by the American speed. So with China, for example, China, they were supposed to not be able to crack NVIDIA's chips for what, 5 years, 10 years? And then they did it the next year.
Yeah.
So if going by that timeline, well, Bitcoin's compromised. But if going by the American timeline, then yeah, sure, it'll take 10 years. Now the problem isn't necessarily with that; it's how quickly can Bitcoin respond, because you can, with any encryption system, you get just a basic password. If you have a password that's just numbers, then you have 10 characters. Every single time you add a character to the length of that password, it becomes harder to guess by a factor of 10, a multiple of 10. It's because now you have exactly what you had, plus an additional 10 character, plus an additional 10 different variations on it because of the 10 characters that you can add. Just very, very simple for whoever's listening. Now, with that, with Bitcoin, they have a lot more than just numbers within their system, within their encryption, and there are 256 levels on that. So if you have the 256-bit encryption, then you add to that, like let's say you double it. Now that's not doubling the complexity. That is that's adding an exponential factor to it, to the tune of 256 again on top of what you had. So like it's not just times 2, it's like times 2 to that, and that is an exorbitant number, and that's on top of what you already had, not just added to it, but multiplied against it. So
Yeah.
the problem isn't necessarily that, because any security system within tech is not let's lock people out, because that's impossible. It's going to get cracked eventually. Every security system is like this. Even your house is like that. If someone really wanted to get into your house, well, you lock your door, you put a sign out front that says that you have a security system, and that's supposed to dissuade attackers. If they really wanted to get in, well, they'd ignore the sign, they'd cut the power, they'd break down the door, jump through a window, blow up the wall, something. Like they could get in if they wanted to. With this, you have stuff there where, yeah, you get enough power, you'll be able to get in. And there are a few different ways that you can do that. And so, like, yeah, it's going to get compromised eventually, but how quickly can Bitcoin developers respond? They're not exactly known to be the fastest people.
True. And I think that's also a big part of it, right? So, based on, what the paper was also saying about it in terms of the stages, right? So if we think about the timeline for this to get done and where we are today, so, and I have no reason to doubt the paper and the research put here, was that we're really what they call stage 0, is that we do not have enough logical qubits even close to what would be required to reverse engineer, public key to private key, let alone going from hashed key to public key, then back to private key. So we're not even close to that. So despite the fact that IBM, and Google are saying, oh yeah, it's coming, and they're investing billions upon billions of dollars on it, we're not at the stage right now. So the next stage would be to actually have people using quantum computers. So what they call stage 1, commercial viability. But again, I mean, what we're talking about here is still being able to do certain, doing certain whatever computer-based applications, but we'd still not be at the point where we would be able to use it to break the encryption. A lot of what ARK was saying in this one is that this would be, you'd be seeing a lot more, let's call it, I think probably military or applications are going to probably be using it at that point. But, that's just really stage 1. Just, how it works with almost any industry, adoption tends to be slow, and then it accelerates up into the S curve. And then once you get to the stage 2, then you'd be able to break the weak cryptography. So, that could, that's easily 5-10 years out. And then eventually you get to stage 3 and 4 where you're going to start breaking Bitcoin's encryption. So, and I think this is what's important here. And as David just said, what matters here is, I don't think it's not what quantum computing can do. It's how quickly will it come about and how suddenly. Like, we don't like surprises, right? So if all of a sudden IBM came out with the best quantum supercomputer tomorrow that could break any code, then yeah, Bitcoin's kind of screwed. But if it takes time like this, if it actually goes orderly according to a normal progression, then the developers have time to catch up. I would assume, I'd like to think that they're going to be a little bit smarter or faster, David, than what's been historically just slow. But they need time, and they're already preparing. So the Ethereum Foundation's already hard at work getting this into, the next generation of the Ethereum coming out. So I think it all depends on time. If you give people time to adapt and prepare, this will be a non-event. I think it's all about time.
Yep. And I was reading in the white paper that some of the early uses of it in let's say just like the work industry would be in chemistry, medicine, and anything science related, right? Do you guys have any probable use cases for it within those industries, or see any probable use case for in those industries?
In which industry?
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed that.
In the chemistry, medicine, and any science related industry.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. In fact, I would think some of the first applications would be in those industries, just because you have complex needs, right? Especially more in the chemistry or the drug discovery section, when you're so focused on understanding structure of biomolecules and molecules and things like that. Quantum computing is going to excel at deciphering underlying structure of compounds, which would make it easier to build materials, build drugs, and everything like that. No, absolutely. I think those would be some of the first industries that would really, really want to adopt it. Excuse me.
David, what about you?
Well, you have advances that are being made by AI specifically, and that's because it's a more powerful technology than what we had before, and so it's able to get to good results faster than what we had before. It gets a lot of the work out of the way. Quantum computing isn't a magical tool. It's just a more powerful tool. So it's going to amplify things a little bit. So in the same way that you could try to cut down a tree with an axe, or you can try to do it with a chainsaw, you're going to get better results with a better tool. So this is going to make advances there. It's going to make good advances, but it's just going to, it's entirely designed to just amplify the efforts. So much like cracking encryption, you can do it with current computers. It's going to take you a while, but you can do it. Now with those, you'll just be able to do it faster, just like the cutting down the tree example. So like if you have, for example, a really complicated math problem that other people have not been able to solve until now, well, now you have the computing power to do it, and you have the speed to do it. Like it's not going to take you a year and then have you wondering, is the formula wrong? It'll take a week or something like that. It'll be much faster, and then you'll be able to get those results. You'll be able to iterate, and you'll be able to change what needs to be changed, fix whatever needs to be fixed, and then you keep going and solve those problems a lot faster.
Yeah, agreed. And, you know, because when I think about some of the, you know, especially the industries that affect us or where we're focused on, like finance, I mean, the banks and asset managers are already piloting, you know, some kind of quantum tools. You know, they're primarily using it right now for risk modeling, options pricing, portfolio optimization, Monte Carlo simulation, stress testing, all these things that requires, you know, conducting millions of simulations and permutations, you know, to figure out, you know, the potential outcomes for an options price, right, where it's terminal values and things like that. So we're already seeing a lot of that in proof of concept stage, let's say. It's so much interest going on. I also have a friend who just started an AI for logistics, you know, for a logistics company for, like, you know, freight forwarding and all that, and they're doing incredibly well. And he was telling me that quantum computing is going to be absolutely incredible for logistics, you know, for anything that has, anything that has complex traveling salesman problem kind of thing, that quantum computing is going to be absolutely amazing for that. The other kinds of applications that I think would be incredible for is not just, let's say, the supply chain optimization, but let's say the way hospitals optimize their resources. So, like, you know, I know for, you know, that, let's say, here in Montreal, the Jewish General Hospital, which is one of our top hospitals, it's, you know, a very well-known hospital globally. They hire optimization experts all the time for, you know, how to optimize resources with nursing staff, ER, and everything like that, to make sure you have the right amount of people at a right amount of time. Quantum computers are going to excel at that kind of task. So, I mean, this is really where, and I think that's also something that came out of the paper, Joe, which is probably why you asked this to begin with, is that we are going to see so much more adoption by various industries doing tasks like this before these computers are even going to be capable of cracking the weakest encryptions at the Bitcoin level. So this is why I still think we got a lot of time. You know, I think, you know, I wouldn't be panicking, but I think there's so many other industries that are going to benefit like crazy from this. And you never know, like, you know, when you start coupling quantum computing and AI, maybe this will usher in the Star Trek generation where we'll all start wearing the same clothes. You know, we'll just get one uniform for everybody and there will be no more war. We'll have our starships getting ready to go. You never know. Quantum computing could be the thing that changes everything for humanity. Maybe not, but it could.
I'm definitely pushing back on that. Here's why. With the medical example, I've seen the internals of those. I've worked with software at medical companies, and generally what they ask for is this dashboard that's full of every piece of information that you could possibly ask for, which means that you've got like 100 tabs over here on the left, like you've got 50 different boxes here, all within your computer. And remember, these computers aren't like wall size; they're the computers that you're working on. And so like every single thing is shoved in there and it's buggy, it's a mess, and like, even then, you have all these different providers who are competing on these things. So the information that was supposed to be aggregated amongst all these different medical providers still isn't. And then what do you have them asking for? It's like, well, I want a way to print out so I can walk around with the paper and like play around with that and all that stuff. So they're still not embracing the technology in the way that would actually optimize things. And this is very much like the military. The military, like civilians always talk about, yeah, this is military grade. Like, yeah, like that's supposed to mean it's super top. It's not. It's not. It's the opposite. Every military person will tell you that, yeah, what military grade means is it was paid for by the lowest bidder. Now, those are entirely opposite views on the exact same thing. Civilians will tell you, it's like, oh yeah, if we have this and the military had it years ago. Military will tell you, yeah, we're still using the stuff from 20 years ago. Like, it's entirely different perspectives here. Now, with these optimizations, the big thing that's stopping here is it's not that the technology isn't there, it's that people are stopping it. People aren't using it. So we have this with the economic system, for example. We have this with things that we know are problems, but they're not changing. If you have people in power and they're used to doing things a certain way, they're going to want things to keep being done that way. And then it takes the next generation coming up wanting to do things a different way, and then that's when things change. So like things generally change every 20 years. You look at this in research, and you have people who are defending their own research, even though it's wrong, even though it can be changed very, very easily, and they'll just stay there and push out other people so that way they can defend their positions. So that way they can still be on top while they're still kicking. Now, once they die off, and then the next people come in, then you have things change, because overall, like I've said this through other things, like this world doesn't really respect ideas. It respects blood. Now, that sounds morbid. It sounds dark. It sounds like something a metalhead or a goth would say, but it's true. If you get evolution,
says the guy wearing a Metallica t-shirt right now, by the way, David. Says the guy wearing the Metallica t-shirt.
Yeah. This is something like you'd hear on Death Clock. They'd be like, oh, yeah, that's metal. It's like all that stuff. But yeah, like you get evolution. It's paid for in blood. You get good ideas, not because they make it to the top, not because they win the argument, but because bad ideas get people killed or lose people money. And I really should put that in the other way around, because getting killed is kind of like the worst option there. But you're not going to get things to change just because they're better. It's because the bad thing stops being used.
So I wanted to ask something, right? Cordell, basically in the white paper, it says that we're at stage 0, right? Where quantum computing is just existing, right? I want to ask both of you a very simple question, right? Do you think we are already using quantum resistant encryption and people are not knowing or are not aware that we're using it? Do you think so?
I mean, my first answer would be if we are, I don't think they would tell us, you know. Personally, I think no. I think it's still in proof of concept stage. But again, I'm not enough of an insider to be able to say, yes, you know. Anyways, David, by the way, I just wanted to say that was so well said. So I completely agree with that. And, you know, I just would say that, you know, I would like to hope that people can get over inertia and laziness and actually focus on what could bring humanity to the next level instead of what you said. So anyways, that's it. But no, I don't think we're seeing encryption. Like, I don't really know, but I from what I've been told by the people that I know that are like researchers and stuff in it, no, not yet.
David?
Oh yeah, I think so. Now this is just off memory, but I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I heard about universities using this or other research labs that are using these, and so yeah, they'd be in use, not like mainstream, but they'd be in use via those. I'm pretty sure governments contract those out, like they pay for them, they fund the research, and they're able to use those for various reasons through those. And so, yeah, I'm pretty sure they're being used. I don't know specifics, but off of memory, yeah, I'm pretty sure they're being used.
Okay, noted. Okay. And this is a very big question, right? And Cordell, I know you write a lot of like white papers or, you know, files regarding trading and stuff like that. And same with you, David. So I wanted to ask both of you also, what do you think, or what makes a good white paper?
Oof. the first thing I would say, what makes a good white paper is don't call it thought leadership. Like, I cannot stand corporate jargon.
Yeah.
I can't stand it. And, look, I've worked for large corporations, and someone, you always get the marketing department saying, oh, our goal is to be thought leaders and come up with thought leadership. And I look like, what the hell does that even mean? Can you even tell me what that means to be a thought leader? So the first thing that makes a successful white paper is don't just do it so that you think you're a thought leader, and you need to do it for marketing purposes. Okay. Because that, in the end, it's garbage, right? You're just reading stuff that you don't say anything, or in the end, you put out a 20-page white paper that could have been a 5-paragraph pamphlet. So that's the first thing to me, is you need to actually have something to say. People have to be interested. People have to be drawn into it, and it needs to address a need. It has to, that's just so textbook what I just said. I said no corporate jargon, and then look what I just said. But ultimately, if what you're writing about isn't interesting to people, they're not interested in it, they're not going to read it. So to me, the first thing is just the motivation. What you're trying to communicate, is it actually something that people want to read? Are you communicating something different, something new, or are you just rehashing something that's already out there just because you're in the Me Too phase with the white papers? Like, to me, it's, you have to be interesting. It has to be something that people are going to read and learn. People need to learn something. People need to get something out of it, so that they come out of it with something that they didn't know beforehand. That, to me, is what makes a good white paper. For the ones that I love to see, or any kind of paper, is, did you teach me something I didn't know, or did you get me thinking as how I can take what you wrote one step further and maybe build something or develop something? But don't approach it from a marketing angle. That is my biggest complaint about most white papers. Don't approach it from a marketing angle. Approach it from the information advantage angle.
Okay, David, what about you?
I'd say the first thing would be, do people care about this topic? If you're in crypto, as an example, and you're about to write a white paper about some topic, and about some topic within crypto, and people have already made their decision on that, then your white paper isn't going to do anything. You could add every new piece of information that people weren't thinking about. You're going to have 3 people read it, and 2 of them not going to understand it, and the last one's probably going to be you. So with that, you first have to have people actually be interested in that topic to write there. So I'd say that would probably be first, and then everything else that Cordell said.
Okay. Would you say that, let's say you're writing a white paper for your product, right? Do you think breaking down or simplifying the architecture of your product, for, let's say, someone who isn't very tech savvy or isn't fond of what you're doing, right? Let's say someone who's just coming into crypto is looking at your stablecoin, David, right? Would you say breaking down your white paper in a very simplified way is the way to go for that person?
Yeah. Now, here's the problem on that. When I wrote it, I thought that I broke everything down very, very well. It was not anywhere near the level of what I see when I see research papers. Now, when I see research papers, I see people describing the color green and saying oh, well, you have to use these shades of things. You have to do this complex calculation and all this thing. You're going to have 3 pages about how to mix yellow with blue. So I see research papers, I see that. And meanwhile, I was talking about things well, yeah, here's the basis for it. Here's what you do. Here's why. It was very short. It goes into the information that's needed. It didn't go into extra. It didn't fluff it up. I wasn't trying to seem smart. And people still didn't understand it. So I'm probably not the best person for this, because I thought I was writing things simply, and I apparently, still anyone that was reading it thought that it read like a research paper.
It's interesting, because you always got to try and find a way to balance out the academic aspect and the dumbed down aspect of it. Because if I think about a lot of the papers that the scientific papers I read, or even all of the books, I mean, I think most of us at one stage of our computer programming development have all read books to get better. You know, like we've all looked for books on Python, AI, machine learning, Bitcoin, whatever, you know, blockchain, whatever you want. We're reading books. And, you know, how many times you're going through these books and you get nothing out of it, right? They're just either giving you an overview of Python packages or an overview of a topic that you probably already know. And in the end, maybe you're lucky if there's one chapter in the book that's actually useful. And then when it comes to the papers, and even some of the books, they're just so academic. They're just throwing mathematical formulas at you the entire time. And like even people that are mathematically inclined get lost or bored in it. So if people don't actually see, you know, what am I doing and what am I going to use it for? You know, you'll probably lose them pretty quickly. So one of the things that I always, you know, look for is it just math? Are you just trying to show off how smart you are, or are you able to communicate to a level? And that's really, you know, a tougher part, like what David was just describing. Always use simple words, like, you know, don't use utilize if you could use use. Okay, like that's one thing. Another thing, like people utilize way too much. And, you know, that's not even what utilize means. Utilize was supposed to say, you know, using something for a purpose that it wasn't intended for. So like, you know, I cringe when I hear the word utilize, or people saying and or, like people talking to me and saying and or. And I'm like, what am I in court? You know, like it's just so dumb it down. And just in terms of, and then that's one of my biggest weaknesses, and something I had to get a lot better at when writing, is dumbing things down. And that's like AI is a blessing for that, because then I could take what I write and just say, can you please, you know, this is my audience, this is my desired tone and voice, please change it, dumb it down. And AI has been fantastic for that. So dumbing it down is a skill. You know, it's something you got to get better at, because the majority of the things I get are either too academic, too mathematical, or just don't say anything useful. You know, you got to find and strike that balance. You know, like I'm writing this book, and that's been the most important approach that I'm taking for writing my book, is that it has to be focused on the process. The last thing I want to do is write a book where it's just an overview of Python packages that pretty much you can just get from AI nowadays. You know, it has to be about the experience, something that I've done that I can share with others to make people better at what they're doing. And that really is the purpose of a white paper, really, to me. It's you sharing something to show how you're taking something to the next level, how you're improving things in that selected field, and how you're going to improve the, you know, whatever the process for people around you. That's the purpose of the white paper, is to show how you've improved the process, how you're doing something that is hopefully better than what's already there. So nobody just needs another overview of Python libraries, for example. I just keep coming back to that one.
Okay.
That was a nice long rant. Sorry.
It's fine. So I think we're coming near to the end of the podcast. I wanted to ask you guys, in the near future, do you think there are any risks or downsides to quantum computing?
David, go first. I want to think about this one, if you don't mind.
Yeah, the downside of quantum computing from what I've seen is that it is very, very expensive, but like that's also part of the feature for it. With any new technology, well, anything that we have within this world is pretty cyclical. Now that's just off the top of my head. You probably have some example of something that isn't. But most things that I can think of when I think of things within this world, they're going to be cyclical. The seasons, for example, human lives as another. When we go through the different stages of civilization, what do? We end up aggregating together, and then we end up splitting apart again. You had different tribes, and then those tribes came together to farm, and they ended up splitting up when they found out that they're also able to farm, and then they came together for the cities with the factories, and then now they're splitting up again. Now that we're able to work through things via the internet. With human lives, you start like what was that riddle? It starts on 4 legs, it moves to 2, and then it goes back to 3 or something like that. Like yeah, you start in diapers, you end in diapers, dust to dust, and all that stuff. It's all cyclical. With technology, it's the same thing. what did we have? What did we have when we started with computers? We had like these server rooms. Like we had large monolithic things that you'd have to go in and have very specialized people to use. And then what did that end up being? It ended up getting smaller. It ended up going out into personal computing. Now we have quantum computing. It's doing the same thing. We have large servers that ended up. We had companies ended up with large servers that we would all access, and then they ended up splitting those up. When Google came around, what did they do? They created like their big thing that everyone was talking about was that, oh yeah, they just buy up random parts and then they put them together, so that because like they expect them to fail, and so like they have all these different ones all working at the same time, and they distributed it.
So I think David, right, the costs, by the way, are insane. Right now, just like any new technology, the amount of money required to get any of this done is insane. So if you think about the money, the electricity requirements, and we're already running into enough problems with that with AI and blockchain. So I think there are a lot of stumbling blocks before we can get any of this commercialized. All right, a lot of stumbling blocks. But just like everything else, like every other industry in the history of mankind, everything starts off expensive and then gets scaled up and gets cheaper as we have more advancements and better production, more efficient stuff, everything. So I think, that's that. But I mean, I think the biggest risk, and I think it's usually the biggest risk of anything, is just, rushing things out to market, getting everything out so quickly just to get it out. And especially when you're backed by venture capital and everything like that, without understanding the full range of the consequences. And AI is a perfect example of that right now. Where the models are going at such speed, like when we've said this so many times that, at some point we need to slow down because like the civilization's not ready to have mass displacement of jobs and everything like that. In quantum computing, we probably haven't even appreciated the full range of applications for it. And all it takes is one bad player to think of something to use it for, and
that's it.
We're in trouble.
Okay. Understood. Well put, Cordell. Honestly, I couldn't say it better myself, right? I think we can end off the episode here, if I'm not mistaken. We're already hitting the hour mark, or we're almost there, if I'm not mistaken.
Almost there, yeah. But it's good. I mean, this was a good discussion. I mean, if you think about it, like, I'm hoping our listeners just learned a little bit more about what quantum computing is and why it's a risk to Bitcoin potentially. And just based on everything we said, we're not there yet. It's going to take a lot of time. And, how quickly this stuff comes out, I think to me is what matters. How much time do we have to prepare? If everything gets thrown at us quickly and we have no time to prepare, then we could be in trouble. Otherwise, I always like to say that don't fight against science. Like when humans need to discover something for our survival, we tend to do it. So I don't know. I'm very hopeful for the technology. Just we need patience and we need time.
Yeah, we're currently at stage 0, so the best thing right now is to just see where things go, see where things play out. Hopefully, no one has any malicious intent with quantum computing down the line, and just completely just screws us over as a humanity. But this has been episode 12 of the Crypto and Coffee podcast. We discuss a lot of Bitcoin and its relation to quantum computing and where we're currently at in the stage of quantum computing. So likewise, I'd like our listeners to check out the rest of our playlists or other episodes, and see us next week or next 2 weeks for episode 13.
I think this was actually episode 13, by the way.
Oh, well, that was 14. Sorry.
Next one's 14.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, everyone.